Skyrim was once the land of many butterflies. Now, not so much.
Skyrim is a large game with many places to go, people to meet, quests to complete, and enemies to slay. As you venture across the frosty northlands of Tamriel though, you'll no doubt pick up various ingredients that can be used in alchemy. In the Elder Scrolls, alchemy is the skill by which you combine various ingredients to create potions and poisons to aid you in all manner of activity. In this guide, we'll be covering some of the more interesting toxins that you can distill from the various collectible flora and fauna. If you're looking for a guide over helpful potions though, then don't worry, as there's an entire separate video over that. Anyway, before we get to actually brewing poisons, there are a few things in Skyrim that both directly and indirectly affect alchemy that are worth covering. The first thing to address in regards to alchemy is that you can only do your mixing at an alchemy station. These chemistry tables are located in all cities and some towns, inside of apothecaries, the chambers of the local court mage, and occasionally in an inn, as well as either coming with or being an upgrade you can purchase for any of the houses you can own. When it comes to ingredients, almost everything you'll use regularly is plant-based and has one or several locations to regularly harvest from, which means if you farm the same area over and over, you'll run headlong into respawn mechanics. In Skyrim, for a plant to respawn after you pick it, you must leave the area and not return for 240 hours, or 10 days. That's in-game time, by the way. If you harvest things from inside of a dungeon though, the rules are a little bit different. The 10-day rule still applies if you don't clear the dungeon. However, if you do clear the dungeon by killing the boss, it takes not 10 but 30 in-game days for the dungeon to reset. This encourages you to have multiple locations to harvest ingredients from, as just using one place doesn't really work all that well. There's also a similar rule for how frequently shops, and by extension apothecaries, restock. It takes a full 48 hours or 2 in-game days for any vendor's stock to resupply. Even further related to this is the Hearthfire expansion, which can be bought separately but also comes built into the Ultimate Game of the Year and Special Editions of Skyrim. In Hearthfire, you can build your own house, and it's possible to have an outside garden and inside greenhouse. In both places, you can grow nearly all plant-type ingredients, and after harvest, it takes 3 in-game days before the plants will yield another sample. Any seeds put in a planter will grow initially in 1 day though, which makes it possible, though a bit tedious, to exploit a greenhouse or garden if you use a perk from the alchemy tree called Green Thumb. On the note of perks though, everything in the alchemy tree is pretty self-explanatory, and the only perks that directly affect the concoctions covered here, aside of the multiple levels of alchemist, are poisoner, concentrated poison, and purity. Whether or not you take any of these perks though, is entirely up to you. That's all of the prerequisite information, so with that covered, let's move on to the list of poisons and what you'll need to make them. We'll start things off with a rather unorthodox poison. Paralysis. As the name implies, this poison literally paralyzes an opponent, causing them to lock up like a statue and commonly fall over. This can be particularly useful for warriors and the like, because it allows you to incapacitate an enemy, then wail down on them while they can't fight back or even defend. The easiest ingredients to brew this poison from include canis root, which is a gnarled root that looks like a tiny dead tree or bush, and is found in decent concentration in Halemarch, the swamp between Morthal and Solitude, more specifically around the Apprentice Stone. The next ingredient also grows in the Halemarch swamp, the swamp fungal pod. All you really have to do to find it is just wander around the marsh and hop between its small islands. Another ingredient is impstool, a type of slimy-looking mushroom with a yellow cap and white stalk, found in many caves across Skyrim. However, there is a particular mushroom-rich cave with a considerable number of samples called Chillwind Depths, located west of Morthal and south of Dragon's Bridge. Keep this place in mind, as it's a great place to collect a lot of ingredients, as you'll find out as we continue. Before hopping on to the next toxin though, you should know to avoid combining canis root and impstool, as these 2 ingredients will also produce a restore health effect, which will naturally taint your poison. The next poison to brew is that of weakness to magic, which obviously enhances spell damage. This clearly aids mages, allowing them to follow up a quick stab with spells that suddenly hit much harder. The most easily acquired ingredients for this effect start with Creep Cluster, a strange red root found all over Eastmarch, an area north of Riften and south of Windhelm covered in hot springs and geysers. Second are Jazzbay grapes, which grow in good quantity all over the exact same region. The last two ingredients are much more common, including torch bugs, which only appear between 8 and 11 PM, pretty much across the whole of Skyrim, and can sometimes be concentrated in Bloated Man's Grotto just north of Falkreath. The other is good old Salt Pile, which you can find when looting bags, sacks, and barrels, as well as buying from inn owners. Surprising as it may seem, there's no single good source of salt in Skyrim, though the fish barrels in Riften tend to have plenty. As for ingredient conflicts, you should be mindful that Salt Pile and Jazzbay grapes, when combined, will add a Restore Magicka effect to your poison. This may not make a difference in all situations, but it is something worth knowing nonetheless. Moving along, it's time to look at the poison effect, Weakness to Poison. Just as the name suggests, weakness to poison enhances the effect of any poison a target is afflicted with. This means it directly enhances the harm done by concoctions that plainly damage health. You can distill this effect from the following more common ingredients. Bleeding crowns are your first good bet, found in many caves across Skyrim, but like all mushrooms, you can find a large quantity of them in Chillwind depths. There's also death bells, a common poison ingredient found in good supply in the Hailmarsh Swamp, the earlier mentioned marsh between Morthal and Solitude. This marshland is also home to the next ingredient, the giant lichen, another fungal alchemy component that's somewhat flat and also carries the weakness to poison effect. Lastly though, and most easily acquired in gross quantity, is the Charis egg. The Charis egg is harvested from Charis spawning pods, most commonly found in deep caves in Dwemer ruins, as Charis are creatures that Falmer tame. It'll take a bit of delving to find more than a few samples, but the most convenient, though not the most abundant location to find them is, you guessed it, Chillwind Depths. Get used to hearing about this location, as it's literally where alchemists and assassins go to have a field day. Now, obviously a concoction that enhances poison damage is no good if you don't have poison that actually delivers damage, which brings us to the classic Poison of Damage Health. This solution simply inflicts all its poison damage at once, and as soon as your target feels the sting of your weapon. The common list of ancillary materials for brewing this poison begins with red mountain flowers, which literally grow all over Skyrim and have no favored place to sprout. To find these, just follow any road and you'll find plenty of them along the path. Next is the already mentioned Impstool, and again, Chillwind Depths. The third ingredient is Nightshade, which can be found growing in fair quantities inside the walls of Solitude and Riften, as well as in and around Falkreath, as this flower takes root around where the dead are buried. Fourth are Death Bells, which grow in the now constantly mentioned Hailmarsh Swamp. Death Bells are a unique poison ingredient because they have a special 1.5x multiplier, meaning any poison made with the Death Bell delivers 50% more damage than a standard poison. However, there's also the last and best damage health ingredient, the River Betty, a tiny fish that you can find in nearly any lake in Skyrim, such as the one Riften is built on. What makes this tiny fish so special is how it has a poison multiplier of 2.5, meaning any poison concentrated from this little fish delivers 150% more damage than any of the normal ingredients. Also, it's worth mention, you can't combine the multipliers from Death Bells and River Betties, as only one multiplier can be in effect at a time. However, it's also worth mention that if you do combine River Betties and Death Bells, you'll gain an extra poison effect of Slow. Finally, while dealing all damage at once is alright, you may also want a poison that burns health away over time. In this case, you're looking for the lingering damage health effect, which can in some cases be much more devastating since it deals damage over time. To make this particular toxin, you'll want to search for the more common ingredients, starting with Mora tapinella. This mushroom is found mostly in forests, growing on the stumps of cut trees and fallen logs, and grows in particular concentration around Riverwood. There's also the, once again, previously mentioned Impstool and Chillwind Depths. The last ingredient is the orange dartwing, a dragonfly that hovers most frequently over lakes and other bodies of water, and can serve as a potential indicator that the earlier covered river Betty might be swimming below. Again, look for them over larger bodies of water, but they can be found in the Hailmarsh Swamp with a fair amount of ease. Though there are more poisons to brew in Skyrim, at least one of the 5 covered here will no doubt help you in some way, no matter your playstyle. Also, keep in mind that experimentation is what's rewarded most in Alchemy, so don't be afraid to seek out the best concoctions on your own. If poisons aren't your thing though, and you're more interested in potions, then don't worry. In the companion guide to this video, we'll cover useful mixtures you can drink to buff yourself and gain an edge in combat. Until next time though, I'm William Strife, and this was the Skyrim Alchemy Poison Guide. I'll see you later.